Hi, welcome to Serial Binger. You are listening to The Greatest Estate Designer. Happy binging. Something novel-like happened to me. When I opened my eyes, I found myself inside a novel. Iron-Blooded Knight is an indomitable epic led by the icy-cold hero, Javier Azarjan. I transmigrated into the world of that grand story as the drunken young master whom Javier served when he was still unknown. I didn't know back then that this was the beginning of a story in which I, an ordinary civil engineering student, became the guardian of this world. Relationship Point (RP) system has been activated. You can acquire RP by improving relationships with key characters. You can develop skills by investing the acquired RP. Your current RP, 0. Strange messages like an alarm rang inside my head. What is RP? What is skill development?
I'm tired.
So sleepy. On the bed, Suho frowned and tossed his body. It was annoying. Of course it was. I took classes during the day. At night, I worked hard at my part-time job. In the meantime, it was natural that I was tired because I read novels all night long. No, it's almost karma. But I've done my homework. I could get up 30 minutes later than usual. A satisfied smile arose at the thought. However, Suho's smile didn't last long. Please wake up. I heard an unfamiliar voice. The voice felt cold and sharp. Is it a dream? Maybe it's the sound that came from dreams. Suho tossed and turned to the opposite direction. But even that gesture couldn't stop the voice from being heard again. It's late. It's time to get up, Lloyd Nim. Huh? It was not a dream. There was definitely a voice coming from right next to me. How? I dazedly came to my senses. This was a 2-Pyeong Gashawon Room 12. Pyeong Gashawon Room. Pyeong is a Korean unit of area and floor space. 1 Pyeong is about 3,305 square meter. Gashawon is a small room filled with everything you can find in a normal house. It is originally a residential facility for exam takers. I always locked the door. But there was someone else who came inside and talked to me. Suho carefully opened his eyes. His whole body stiffened without him even realizing it. Are you awake? You woke up quickly today. A silver-haired handsome man was sitting neatly by the bed. I think he was about 20. He had a face bereft of a smile. His figure looked as good as a blade forged from ice frost.
Javier.
Azarjan, Suho murmured unconsciously. His murmur could be heard clearly. In the Iron-Blooded Knight novel that I read all night long last night, there was an illustration of the novel's protagonist, Javier Azarjan, who looked like the man in front of me. No, it was exactly the same, even to his smile with only one corner raised that looked like an elegant painting. You finally remembered my name, thank you. Just by looking at your face, I could tell you didn't appreciate it at all. But why are you here? I spat out unconsciously. Javier's face grew a little darker. Because the Lord has entrusted me to be your escort. The Lord? Escort? Right. Why? Just in case something like last night happened again. Last night You were so drunk you couldn't walk. You went on a rampage in the tavern and destroyed 3 tables, 6 chairs, 19 plates, and 6 candlesticks. Oh, you also wrecked the buffalo horn ornament the owner used to love. I am innocent. I meant it. I only read books at Gashawon last night. My head was throbbing. Getting hungover because of alcohol I didn't even drink, it was a little unfair. Then give me some water first. I wanted to get myself together first. I looked around the bedroom while gulping down the water Javier had brought me. It was an unfamiliar, clean, and spacious bedroom. It was different from my 2-Pyeong Gashawon room where the yellow wallpaper was in shambles. This is a little crazy. Could it really be possession like the plot of a novel? And I possessed a nobleman? Suho accepted this reality readily. This was paradise compared to a life full of anxiety without family at Gashawon. But there was something that caught his eyes. "What is that?" Suho pointed to the cabinet on the other side of the bed. There was a red piece of paper attached to the cabinet that looked odd. It wasn't just there. It's on the big bookshelf, on the refreshment table, on the chair where Javier sat, and even on his bed. Everything called furniture had a red label pasted on it. "This can't be." Suho gulped down dryly. My conjecture was confirmed by Javier. "Have you forgotten already? It's a foreclosure sign that was sticked yesterday." That was a concise answer. Thanks to that, it suddenly occurred to me. The Baron whom Javier served fell at the beginning of the novel. The Baron and his wife were swindled by a vicious scammer, and then they committed suicide after losing all of their possessions and land. What about the Baron's eldest son, Lloyd? He fell ill and died because of alcohol intoxication. Afterward, Javier built Lloyd's grave and left the territory. That was the prologue of the grand story where the protagonist, Javier Azrahan, took the first step into the world. So I possess the young master who died at the beginning because of alcohol? Me? The joy from becoming an aristocrat soon cooled down. This felt like a huge problem. Whoa, this is real. Truly. A few hours later, Lloyd, was facing a mirror. On the full-length mirror with a red foreclosure label pasted on just like other furniture, there stood a smooth-looking black-haired man. It was Lloyd. That's me now. In fact, I still couldn't believe it. I didn't hate it though. No, to be honest, I liked it. Life in Korea was hard. I've had a hard time. Originally, I was the only son of an ordinary family. I took the CSAT exam like everyone else. I became a civil engineering student in college. But when I was in the army, the shadow of real estate investment scams strangled my parents. My parents, who died like that, left me with only a large amount of debt. The house and all of the properties were confiscated. In order to not take on the remaining debts, I had to give up my inheritance. I wouldn't have been able to go to school without the scholarship for the low-income class. At least, I did well in my studies. However, living expenses other than tuition fees were another problem. I had to move back and forth between part-time jobs. It wasn't easy to maintain my grades while working. In the 2-pyong cramped Gashawon room, I had nosebleeds 7 times a week. The free rice and kimchi provided by the Gashawon were the last barrier of my endurance. So, Suho survived like a crook until yesterday. By becoming a nobleman in a fantasy novel I've read, I could catch my breath for the first time in a while. He wasn't a grand aristocrat like a duke or a count. He was just a baron in the countryside with a single country estate, but Lloyd liked it more. You won't get caught in a big trouble. For example, something like treason. Whenever he watched historical or medieval dramas, that had always been a problem. No matter how prominent the aristocrats were, if they got tangled up in the treason, it was over. They literally would get decapitated, without any excuse given. I'd rather be a baron on the periphery than that. It's a niche position on its own. There was no way I'd ever get involved with big incidents such as treason. I can live in luxury and prosperity in the countryside as the heir to a countryside baron. Wouldn't I be able to live contentedly in such a place? Of course, it's after settling the baron's debts. That was the problem. I can't believe now is the time I transmigrated. Javier's explanation came to mind. The date of the foreclosure was yesterday. In other words, what if the possession took place just a month or 2 earlier? I could have stopped the con artist from approaching the baron. I really wanted to grab the novel author by the collar. Still, it has already happened, so we just have to fix it. Otherwise, the baron couple would commit suicide next year. Then, the mansion and estate would be sold and he'd become a villain. It would turn out the same as when I was in Korea. It was a nightmare. I just wanted to avoid that. I didn't want to go through the same mess again. To do that, I had to make money somehow. Money to pay off the baron's debt. I stared at the mirror for a long time. Then suddenly, something came to mind. Lloyd turned to Javier, who stood beside him. Hey. Yes, Lloyd Nim. Is our fiefdom rich? Yes. How much would it be if I collect money from the fief? Are you talking about taxes? No, not like that. Then, like IMF's gold-raising campaign.
Haft. No.
It won't work. Lloyd shook his head. He had wondered if collecting money from people in the fief would be useful, but thinking about it, it wouldn't. If the money was collected without any justification, it was obvious that there would be a huge backlash. And that's still not enough to pay all of the debt in one sitting. I remembered the contents of the novel's beginning. The deadline to pay off the debt was within 2 years, but before that time came, the barren couple killed themselves. The continual pressure because of the debt. The rising interest. The piling debt, so high there was no way to repay. Because of these, the couple loses all hope. That's exactly a year from now on. 5 months after that, Lloyd died while throwing up blood inside his favorite tavern's room. That was mentioned in the prologue of Iron-Blooded Night. Damn it. This isn't some decalcomania. How can it be so similar to what he experienced in Korea? The more he thought about it, the worse he felt. TSK. Let's go on a walk. It was best to take a walk when your head was a mess. Walking had been his habit since he was still Kim Suho of South Korea. No, maybe it's almost the only relief he could afford because a walk didn't cost any money. So, he left the room with Javier. When he got to the mansion's hallway, he ran into a woman who was coming from the other side. She was a fine middle-aged woman with an aura full of refinement and grace. Don't tell me. Suddenly there was a name that popped into mind.
Marbella Frontera.
The Baron's mistress and Lloyd Frontera's mother. She was the only middle-aged woman in this mansion who had that kind of atmosphere. Lloyd swallowed dryly. I've run into you, out of all people. Were there any parents who didn't recognize their children? He might get caught just like this. Fortunately, such worries were groundless. It was because as soon as the Baroness saw him, she clicked her tongue. Are you going out for another drink? Come and read on our website Wuxiao World site. Thanks. The woman gazed at him. Her expression was filled with sorrow and concern. Who would look happy if your son only drank and played every day, even though the family was falling apart? I didn't know anyone like that. Enjoy it in moderation. It's not good for your health. The woman passed by with a small sigh. Lloyd had to stroke his chest secretly. I didn't get caught. Should I say that it's fortunate? Lloyd Frontera was a man who drank every day since he opened his eyes. Thanks to that, Lloyd's mother seemed to be concerned about him with such prejudice. It felt a bit bitter, though. Suddenly, I remembered when I was a freshman at college. It was a time when my family was still well off. I was just a freshman who didn't know anything. I remembered drinking at OT2OT, Student Orientation in Korea, a welcoming event for freshmen, and MT3MT, Membership Training, an event where every student from the same major from freshman to senior spent time at the same place. Every day, whenever that happened, my mother made me dried pollock soup without saying anything. Now, it was already in the past and I couldn't turn back time. Lloyd bit hard on his lower lip. His stride grew by leaps and bounds. Maybe that's why, as soon as they saw him on the road, the villagers hurriedly retreated to the side of the road. Everyone lowered their heads to avoid eye contact. A woman trembled with her hands clenched tightly. Some farmers even had their complexions turned pale. Thanks to this, he was able to realize his situation at once. Yes, this is what kind of person Lloyd is. The contents of the novel came to mind again. The son of Baron Frontera was named Lloyd Frontera. When he was drunk, he often broke or threw things. Violent assault and verbal abuse against one's subordinates were the basics. In short, he was a trashy human being with truly worst qualities. That's why everyone hated me so much. It seems that I'm totally hated. I laughed bitterly. Hey, I asked Javier, who was by my side. What's wrong with everybody? You don't usually treat your Lord's son like that, do you? That was common sense. The Lord was the most powerful man in the region. So, what if the Lord's son was a mess? They should just smile and pretend to respect him, at least in front of his face. They had to try to do that. Just like the owner of a chicken restaurant serving the son of the building owner who stopped by the store, or like a permanent manager who became a yes man to the son of the boss who joined the company as an employee. Wouldn't that be the case for the people here too? In general, yes. In general? Only? Yes. Then what about now?
Javier answered coldly.
It's an emergency. An emergency? In general, a territorial emergency refers to a time when there's a great threat to the people's livelihood, to the well-being of the people, and to the safety of the people. And that's me? Yes. That's quite straightforward. What's straightforward? Oh, you hit the bullseye with facts. TL/N. Here, the author used "daerindagu," a Korean slang which meant to point out a fact that causes mental suffering, X, a weakness of another person. Javier stared at him with an expression that said, "What the hell are you talking about?" Even so, his appearance was still as cold and elegant as a painting. Yeah, it was this guy.
Javier.
Javier was a noble and honorable knight. He was a man who doesn't compromise with any injustice, a hero who is literally the specimen of knights in the novel. Javier's fame later rose throughout the entire Laurentian continent. Of course, his personality wouldn't change just because he was unpopular right now. That's kind of embarrassing.
I swear I never assaulted Lloydnim.
Have you?
No.
Don't you know about factual assault? I don't know. By any chance, have you ever hated me? No, never. No, you looked like you had enough. Lloyd was able to realize that. He hates me too. Javier was a noble knight who valued honor. So, it was only natural for him to hate rascals like Lloyd. Nevertheless, it was this guy who stood by Lloyd's side until he died. He kept his loyalty to the Baron, who was his main master, to the end. What a great guy. A swordmaster who would create history in the continent of Laurentian. The greatest swordmaster of all time. That's the kind of guy my faithful escort would be in the future. Feeling a little strange, Lloyd kept on walking. As a result, he ended up standing in front of a shabby building. Where are we? It's a tavern. A tavern. Yes. This is where Lloydnim spent more time than the mansion. Is this my regular pub? Of course. Unless Lloydnim used another tavern behind my back. Oh my god. Lloyd clicked his tongue inward. He was just walking aimlessly. After all that, the place he visited was his regular pub. How many times did he come and go to this place? Even though the soul changed, his body automatically came all the way here. This isn't some kind of homing instinct. Are you a puppy? Spawning salmon? Or General Kim Yushin? He lashed out at the eldest son of the Baron, who was the original owner of this body, and then turned away. I can't drink during the day, though. Lloyd would have enjoyed it, but not him. There was already a lot to think about, but he didn't have the slightest intention to drink alcohol. Are you going back like this? Of course. I replied to Javier's question right away. However, Javier's reply was unexpected. I'm disappointed then. What? Just as I said, I'm disappointed in Lloydnim. Did you expect me to drink during the day?
No.
Then. I thought Lloydnim came here to apologize and make amends for what happened last night. So, you're disappointed I just turned around? Yes. It's the duty of a nobleman to be responsible, befitting of one's status. This guy, I've felt this for a while, but his straightforwardness is no joke. Even then, it hits hard. In other words, Javier had a strange talent for carefully and painfully inserting advice inside his words. The tavern is a home the owner has been building his whole life, even if it's a shabby place. Last night, Lloyd Nim caused a riot and damaged the furniture in such a precious space. Besides that, Lloyd Nim, he took care of his old mother alone. His mother. Yes. She has been in poor health lately, so the tavern owner was even more worried. So, I've been torturing that poor guy. Yes. It's something I didn't even commit, but Javier's straight jabs made of facts kept coming. Actually, the owner appealed to me last night. He said he felt like dying because his mother had suffered so much from the cold and then was faced with this kind of misconduct. You mustn't run away. After all, Lloyd Nim is the future owner of this estate. Wait a moment. That's it. Lloyd cut off Javier. Is it hard to hear more? No, it wasn't. It was because listening to what Javier said made him ponder about something. The tavern owner's mother is having a hard time from the late winter cold? Yes, young master. Then, why don't you just warm the floor with firewood? Pardon. The people here, don't they know how to heat things up? I don't know. That's what he said from the look in his eyes. The moment I realized that, Lloyd suddenly remembered. Come to think of it, there was nothing like that in my bedroom at the Baron's mansion. He was a civil engineer. It was his habit to look at the structure of the building wherever he went. Thanks to this, he was able to quickly grasp the structure of the Baron's mansion. There were no heating facilities, such as circular heating system or the so-called ondol for ondol, underfloor heating, a Korean traditional architecture. Instead, did the fireplace occupy one side of the bedroom? If that's the case, maybe the tavern owner's house is similar. No, unlike an aristocrat's mansion with fireplaces in each room, one fireplace placed in the kitchen would cover for the entire house. Of course it's cold. The fireplace has more heat loss compared to the ondol. But obviously, it wasn't without flaws. How to implement a good ondol heating system? The building's floor should be completely replaced or rebuilt. The insulation of the building should also be reinforced. We would have to deal with the monstrous consumption of firewood. But both of these shortcomings, I can overcome it. No, rather, I can use that. It's possible if it's me. What if I used my major's knowledge? While thinking of the grim reality on how to pay off the enormous debt, I came up with a plan to raise a large sum of money. The plan was already settled, so then I drew the bigger picture. This is it. It won't be over with just the tavern owner's house. It's a bigger large-scale construction project. There are plenty of chances. I was determined to make the big picture that came to mind a reality. So, I went straight into the tavern. The interior of the tavern was as messy as a battlefield. There were broken tables and chairs lying around. Occasionally, broken pieces of dishes could also be found strewn all across the floor. Oh, geez. I overdid it. There was a sweeping sound. It became clearer when he saw the owner who was cleaning up the mess. Oh, are you here? The bald man was cleaning with a bitter expression on his face. As soon as he saw Lloyd, his complexion paled. There was anger flashed across his face. However, it quickly disappeared. Instead, he could only force an awkward smile. It was a smile of the weak who had no choice, as he still needed to make a living in this territory. Thinking about what I did last night made my blood boil. I couldn't even make fun of it. The sight left a bad taste in Lloyd's mouth. It was because past memories suddenly popped up. When I was working at the pub, I had a lot of bad customers. I had to work all sorts of part-time jobs just to eat and live. It included a job at the pub. Since it was a pub, there were various kinds of customers. Obviously, there were some friendly customers too. No, it was quite a lot. At the pub, getting drunk and talking down to the employees were a common occurrence. Some people flipped the tables or broke the bottles over trivial matters, such as the drinks were too expensive, the side dishes were not good, and the employees didn't bow politely. In some circumstances, they even swung a broken alcohol bottle around while yelling for the boss to come out. Whoa! I sighed when I recalled that time. At that point in time, he was just an employee. There was nothing he could say to the bossy customer. You wouldn't believe how enraged he got when such customers came. Let's stop thinking about it. It was a bitter memory. Thanks to that, Lloyd was able to fully understand how the owner felt. Even though he wasn't the one who created this mess, even if it was the previous owner of this body who did it, he apologized sincerely to the owner. I came to apologize for what I did last night. Pardon. It's my fault. I should have just been drinking quietly, but I ended up causing a big accident. I won't gloss over it. All of the blame was on me. I was genuine. However, did he misinterpret my sincerity? Excuse me, young master. Why are you doing this? The owner's complexion turned from white to blue. It was as if he'd just met a Grim Reaper. Young master, are you unsatisfied about something last night? Then, tell me what I did wrong.
No.
Why do you speak so formally? That's even scarier. This body seemed to be firmly hated by the people in this territory. Lloyd smacked his dry lips. Is it better if I speak comfortably? Oh, of course. Then, will you accept my apology? I'm going to reimburse all the furniture I damaged last night. Really? Has the owner of this body been deceiving people his whole life? Lloyd clicked his tongue. Of course it's true. How about I make you an ondal to make up for it? Yes. It's a room with a heated floor, do you know? I know. It's when you use heated stones and pour water on them. That's a wet sauna that uses steam. This heats up the floor itself. Ondal. You don't know? As expected, he didn't know. The pub owner became silent just like Javier before. Then, there was a possibility that the plan would work. Lloyd licked his lips. That's too bad. You don't know Ondal. If you know, it would be great for your mother. I've heard some rumors. Your mother, I heard she's not feeling well these days. Yes, that's right. That's why I recommended Ondal for you. It heats up the floor itself. You don't even need a bed or anything. You can just lay on the floor and laze around all day long. It cannot even be compared to a sauna. It's getting to him. It's slowly getting to him. I could see his pupils shake. He wavered even more when he heard Lloyd's next argument. When it's cold in the winter, sometimes the body gets chilled to the bone. So this is perfect for elderly people with stiff joints. Elderly people like my mother? That's correct. Older people like it very much when it's hot. However, you're giving it to me? The young master. To be exact, I'll make it for you. You're making it? Can't believe it. That's a matter of course. Of course you can't believe it. Now you must have been wondering what sort of scam I was trying to pull, whether I could make that ondal or something, and whether that thing called ondal really exists. But listening to it reminded you of your mother. So you're on the edge of your seat right now. It's tempting, isn't it? Let's make a written contract with me then. What do you mean, contract? Contract for the construction. What? Get me a pen and some pieces of paper. The owner had a confused face. Still, he politely brought the pen and paper. Lloyd skillfully scribbled down the form of the impromptu contract on the paper. It's only a form anyway. I can make it myself. The employer was the tavern owner. The contractor was me. The construction site was at a vacant lot behind the pub. Let's do this. The entire price, including the contract's amount, will be paid with all of the items I damaged last night. How about that? Are you saying that instead of paying money for the entire damaged objects, you're going to make an ondal or something? Yeah. Lloyd nodded. It was a fact that the Baron is in debt. The money to reimburse the tavern owner was also lacking. But what if we could get the job done right? I could get rid of a splendid amount of deficit from the compensation with it. It's not just about getting rid of the deficit. If I did well, I would get a tremendous amount of benefit. It would be the starting point of huge profits that would get bigger and bigger, just like a rolling snowball. That was the big picture Lloyd was expecting. Because this is what I can do best. I was a civil engineer. I studied hard in my own way. Indeed, I didn't have any grand dreams back then. Like others, I choose my school and department based on my CSAT score. I was just trying to get adequate grades for a stable job. However, perhaps the knowledge that I had accumulated before could be put to good use here. It's land sales, especially construction, that makes the most money. Apartments, buildings, bridges, roads, dams, breakwaters, canals, ports. Building anything costs money. Among them, construction companies, especially contractors in particular, were the ones who get to sit on a money cushion. The bigger the project, the richer they get. Lloyd was aiming for that possibility. Well, that's why we're going to sign a contract. What do you say? Then the young master is serious? I'll be the one making it. Why? Do you dislike that? Well, that's not true. The owner, who was hesitating, eventually signed the Ondal construction contract. Kim Suho, a civil engineering student from South Korea. Lloyd, the eldest son of Baron Frontera. It was the first contract he had gotten in this unfamiliar world. Firstly, even if it was small, he took one step at a time. So, that was how the long-awaited first construction began. He's a naive and desperate man. It had only been a minute since I left the tavern. Javier, who had been silent the entire time, suddenly spoke. What do you mean? When I looked back, Javier's face was as expressionless as before. No. Was it just me, or did it feel colder, just like when a cold wind was blowing? A man who is cornered will become desperate. As such, it narrows his view of the situation and blurs his judgment. These people are easy prey for a wicked scoundrel. Prey. That's right. Come and read on our website Wuxiao World site. Thanks. Oh, so the bar owner is a pitiful prey and I'm a sly bastard who preyed upon him? Whether you're evil or not will depend on what you're going to do now.
Oi.
Somehow, I thought the atmosphere was colder than usual. Only then did Lloyd realize what Javier was thinking. Do you think I'm scamming the tavern owner? That's not true. Then, I think you're taking advantage of the situation of the weak who is cornered. That was it. Lloyd sighed deeply. For some reason, after possessing this body, he was getting misunderstood for everything he did. Let's get this straight then. You're skeptical that I'm gonna make an Ondal for the tavern owner, do you? That's correct. Why? Lloyd Nim never got dirt on his hands even once before in this life. How do you know that? I've heard it from here and there. So it means you never see it in person, right? Indeed. That's absurd, Javier. Pardon. Javier's picturesque eyebrows frowned for the first time. Lloyd stared at Javier, who was about 5 centimeters taller than him, and then said, I'm a little disappointed. Javier, do you judge people just based on hearsays? You're prejudiced. So, just now you saw me sign a contract with the bar owner, right? What do you think I'm going to do with that contract? Of course. Did you think I'm going to throw the contract in the corner and then play with it? That's not it. What do you mean, no? I was right. As I had noticed before, Javier was bad at lying. He had a habit of avoiding eye contact when he lied. It was just like that. You assumed I am swindling the bar owner with the pretext of a contract. I can just make the Ondal some other day. And then, I'll delay the remuneration continuously for the damage I've done with that lie. That's what prejudice is about. Judging others prematurely based on your own assumptions. It could rouse conflicts, support discrimination, shook the family, and then crumble the territory. I guessed Javier didn't expect such a counterattack. Javier kept his mouth shut. You'd probably think it was sophistries, but Lloyd didn't bother to change his mind. Instead, he jabbed at Javier. Anyway, I know what you're thinking, so could you please step aside? Yes. Just 2 steps to the side. Yeah, that way. I'm going to do a rough estimation. I was going to do it before Javier opened his mouth. Anyway, this place was where the Ondal would be built. The most important thing to do before designing was to observe the ground and prepare the materials. I don't think I need precise measurements because it's going to be small. But the ground here was slightly tilted. I'll have to raise it a little bit. There was a pub on one side of the land where the building was going to be built. On the other side, there was the owner's house where he lived. It would be better to build the Ondal in the space between them. Let's examine the ground. Lloyd lowered his body. He examined the soil where the Ondal would be built. He touched the dirt and rubbed it on his fingers. Oh, this reminds me of when I was at school. Touching the soil naturally reminded him of the lecture on soil mechanics. It was a subject that studied properties such as the volume, the particles, and the gaps in the soil. Thanks to that, he could know how much soil he needed to scoop up. It wasn't just that. The dirt he had dug was rolled up like a dung beetle's poop. It had to be rolled, but it shouldn't break. He had even baked, roasted, and steamed the soil in the oven. Thanks to that, his past experiences would be a great help for Lloyd today. The soil was good enough. It wasn't just fine. Contrary to the dark surface, only a few centimeters in reddish soil came out. It was clay. This is awesome. Lloyd stood up and shook his hands. Then, he met Javier's strange gaze. What? Why? Have you never seen a man touch the dirt? At least, I've never seen Lloyd Nim do this. Then, get used to it. You'll see it often in the future. Javier's eyes glowed even more strangely. Lloyd ignored him and moved away. He left the scene to wander around the land. It looked like a leisurely walk, but Lloyd's eyes were surveying the terrain all over the territory. Among them, the focus was on the river crossing the center of the territory. The purpose was to collect clay in large quantities. Come on, let's go home. Even at the mansion, Lloyd never stopped working. It was a monumental first construction. Because you must do a great job with the first order. One incorrect construction could result in bad reviews. That would make it harder to catch the next customer. Then, it would be doomed from the beginning. In order to avoid that, it was important to produce the best quality you could afford. The customer's happiness is the foundation of my money-making plans. He was used to staying up all night. It was because of his part-time jobs and assignments. He drew a blueprint on a blank paper from dusk until dawn. As soon as the sun was up, he went to the mansion's administrator. How much wood do you have in the warehouse? Pardon. It was too early in the morning. Forget having breakfast. The administrator couldn't even wash his face yet. He tilted his head and pondered. Did this guy have been drinking since this morning? What are you going to use the wood for? What am I going to use it for? I'm going to use it to build a building. Here. This is. Move as much wood as it says here to the tavern's backyard. Got it. If you're going to swiftly make it work, you have to be bold like a bulldozer. Because of Lloyd's attitude, the administrator nodded before he knew it. Thanks to this, before lunch, the wood he ordered was already piled up in the tavern's backyard. Now that the materials are here, let's get started. I took off my cumbersome outer garment. I wore only a light shirt and worker gloves. I even carried a shovel here, so I couldn't even be more at ease. I'm used to this kind of hard work every vacation. Even when he was in the army, because he majored in civil engineering, whenever there was a large or small construction job, the administrative officer called him. Finally, by the time he was discharged from the military, he was treated as a major certified working machine. As expected, a real man shovels. Starting from scratch, I dug the ground beside the yard. The excavated soil was moved to the site for the ondal. Every time, the soil was dug carefully and firmly. If I move a lot of soil at once and build the foundation at once, it's going to get messy later. That is a common mistake to make when building a foundation. The soil is being hardened very well, but the bottom part isn't done properly. So, what would happen if the soil was piled up thickly and was pressed all at once? The upper surface would look solid, but the inside would remain soft. A few years later, it will be disastrous if the building gets tilted. Lloyd, who knew this fact well, scooped the soil, moved it, and pounded it over and over again. Suddenly, he looked at Javier. Javier has been standing still for a while. He was faithful to his job as an escort.
Oi.
Did you call me, Lloyd Nim? Yes, I did. Do you have anything you'd like to order me? Yes, I do. Let's shovel together. Javier was speechless. You don't want to? Is that the case? If you are willing to shovel together, the work can be done twice as fast. Ah, the tavern owner's mother must be suffering from the cold right now. If she sleeps in a warm ondal room, she'll be able to relieve that pain soon. But it's impossible for the time being. Why? Because the noble Lord Azrahan refuses to shovel. Ah, if you lie inside the ondal room, the mother's stiff joints will be loosened and her face will be filled with laughter. But it's impossible for the time being. Why? Because the noble Lord Azrahan refuses to shovel. Ah, the last simple wish of a woman whose days are numbered. Shovel, please. In the end, Javier, who couldn't bear it, picked up the shovel. An evil smile bloomed on Lloyd's face. A baron's foolish son and an unknown knight. The two men's ondal construction was in progress. The news quickly spread all over the territory. The rumor had spread. It spread very quickly. There wasn't a place where people lived without gossiping. However, considering that, it still spread stronger and faster than usual. It was because the content of the rumor was so unique. Young Master Lloyd is finally going crazy. What? I heard he's been shoveling. What do you mean? Literally. He's shoveling at the backyard of the tavern, digging up soil and packing it. Why? I don't know either. Have you heard that he threatened the tavern owner? What do you mean threatened? I bet he robbed the land in the backyard. Let's just wait and see. Haha, that's kind of... Someone lamented over the table. Another whisper could be heard from people in the vicinity. Did you hear? I think young Master Lloyd is going to commit suicide. What? Finally. That's what they say. People said they were digging the ground yesterday, and today they're doing it again. What do you mean, digging? He keeps on muttering to himself, something about laying flat stones on the ground. You don't think that's... If it's not a grave to bury a coffin, then what is it? Different and various speculations based on hearsays run rampant. It was said that the drunkard young master, the baron's son, was brewing his own alcohol and storing it under the ground. There was even the rumor that he was digging a tunnel to avoid his father's surveillance, or that he had opened his eyes to a new preference. There was a crowd of onlookers gathered because of the rumors. Amidst all that, the ondal gradually took shape. People, all of you are splendid at gossiping. Lloyd wiped the sweat off his forehead. Mud was smeared on his face. But he didn't care. He looked around. A small ondal room with an area of 6 meters in length and width. Within a few days, the foundation and the walls had been built. It was hard. Making an ondal room was not easy. In fact, it was even harder than expected. First of all, it was because there were no advanced modern tools used to work in the field like in Korea. Because I don't have any electricity-powered tools. Everything had to be done by hand. He established the foundation by utilizing his past experiences working in the military and part-time jobs. The process took 2 full days. Full-body muscle pain was a bonus. He processed the wood obtained from the administrator. It was used to make a traditional wooden frame one. He even built a gable roof to the frame. Reinforced wood was woven between the pillars. Then, he applied the sticky clay and straw mixture. The walls were completed just now after working for 3 days straight. Phew.
Javier.
Did you call me? Are you tired? I'm just getting used to it. Really? Even in this situation, Javier was out of breath. No matter how well built your physiques are, this is different. He must have wasted a lot of energy because he used the muscles he doesn't normally use. And yet, he was still being so calm. It means his remaining amount of power is different from mine in the first place. He was amazed by the future master swordsman's level of stamina. As expected, he's reliable. Especially when he did it for free like this. Lloyd said he lucked out with a small, soft voice. Then, do what I tell you to do. Are there any more? Obviously. How come? Because we haven't finished building the Ondal room yet. But, Lloyd Nim only asked me for a little help. Did I? Yes, you did. Javier cut him off with his characteristic cold way of speaking. Lloyd Nim first asked me to help shovel. You said that was all I had to do. However, you kept on changing your words afterward. When I finished digging the soil, you asked me to help you cut the wood. And then later you asked me for help while saying that it was tough to compact the clay straw mixture. So you hate it? Naturally. Because you're a knight? Javier didn't answer. But Lloyd knew his silence meant he was right. Maybe he was right. Handling shovels and saws instead of swords, with dirt all over his body. Everybody would think that it was inappropriate for the knight's honor. But Lloyd saw a gap in that perspective. By the way, aren't knights supposed to help the weak? Yes. You think so too. Of course it's right? So this is a knight's job too. This is a chivalrous activity because it helps the weak. Does that make sense? Even at this moment when we're like this, the tavern owner's mother must be shivering because of the cold, right? Ah, if only we could finish this one day earlier, happy laughter would bloom at the mother's lips. What else can I do?
Javier sighed deeply.
Lloyd smiled wickedly. Let's do some axing. He pointed outside the Ondal room. Did you see those logs in the corner of the tavern's backyard? I saw it. Yes, well done. Those are red pine trees. Cut that with an axe and make some panels for the roof. What is a panel? It looks like this. Scritch, scritch. Lloyd roughly drew a picture on the dirt floor. 1 span width, 2 span length, and 1 finger thick. If you think of it as a longer version of an AI pad tablet. Oh, you don't know what a tablet is, do you? You can think of it as a plate, but instead, cut the size evenly. Do you understand? Wouldn't it be better to use a saw rather than an axe? Yes, but no. The axe is better. Of course, it's more convenient to cut it with a saw. It's easier to adjust the size to a specific size. However, abrasion will occur severely in the cutting process. The tree's texture is ruined as a result. When water seeps into the broken texture, it'll rot away in no time. If you don't want to have to change the roof after less than a year, do it with an axe. All right, but, come to think of it, Javier was looking at me with a slightly strange look. Where did Lloyd Nim learn things like this? Like this? Building a building. That's right. His stare was still cold. But there was a faint glimpse of emotions hidden in that coldness. It was intense curiosity. Lloyd answered frankly without hiding anything. Korea University. Pardon. Come and read on our website Wuxiao World site. Thanks. I learned it at Korea University. I'm serious. I'm not lying. But I've never heard of such an academy. Ah, of course. You've never heard of me going to an academy somewhere, have you? That's correct. Then just keep wondering. Come on, let's go. We have a lot of work to do, so let's move on. Lloyd waved his hands. He sent Javier outside, cutting red pine trees and making panels for the roof with an axe. It was something that Javier could do better than himself. It was because of the difference in talent. Whether it was a person or a tree, Javier has the best talent in cutting a target into two with a bladed object, because he's already a high-level sword expert. It was from the beginning of the novel Iron-Blooded Knight. It was a fact nobody in the territory knew. Even the Baron, Baroness, and Javier himself didn't know. However, at this point, he already had a marvelous amount of power. High-level sword expert. It was just a rank below the swordmaster, the topmost rank. In a small country, there are only 3 to 4 of them. They are literally just like knight commanders in a small and medium-sized kingdom. I'm only 20 years old now. It wasn't until Javier left this territory that he realized his tremendous talent. It was a future that was yet to come. Anyway, let's move. I took a good rest. Lloyd began the next phase of his work. It was the alpha and the omega of the Ondal room. The gleam, salt, and red bean paste of a sweet red bean bread. The graphic card of a high-end gaming computer. It was the floor of the Ondal construction. It's really important from now on. No matter how good-looking the building is, if the Ondal doesn't work properly, it would be a disaster. Knowing this fact very well, Lloyd exerted his utmost concentration. It'll be from here to here as designed. When he was in the military, the regimental commander was suddenly stuck on a clay sauna. Then, he was transferred to the regiment's headquarters as a representative to build a red clay sauna room. What was the result? The happiness index of the regiment's wife had risen dramatically. He even was rewarded a vacation thanks to the grace of the regimental commander, who was very satisfied. Lloyd made use of his experiences and memories from that time. He dug the floor to build a passageway where the heat and smoke from the furnace will flow inside, so the heat can circulate around the longest path and pass through the floor. He carved his way around the passage. Meanwhile, he didn't forget to carefully adjust the height of the passageway. This is how the heat stays as long as possible without escaping all at once. First, when the fire is lit in the fireplace, the heat and hot smoke will pass through the passageway under the room. With the arrangement of the flat stones, the heat that comes will stagnate. The clay will spread the stagnant heat effectively to the flooring. Then, the heat will be caught one last time before escaping. Finally, the chimney's formation will prevent rainwater and cold air from coming inside the passageways. TL/N. I might made some mistakes while translating this part. I'm not very sure. It's hard. Be even more careful. Reduce errors as much as possible. Dig and check it. Check and refine it again. After that, the passageway's walls were coated with red clay. I dried the red clay sufficiently and then placed flat stones meticulously on the passageway. Thick stones on the lower end near the furnace and thin stones on the opposite upper end. It was laid out carefully. The upper part was too far from the furnace, so it would be heated more slowly and less warm. Therefore, if the thickness of the stones were different, it was possible for the floor to be warmed evenly. Now, it's your turn. The crevices between the flat stones were filled with rocks. The surface was covered with clay dough. Dry mud was laid on top of it and then was packed again. It was applied again as a plaster to flatten the floor, and then it was dried thoroughly. After that, the surface was scraped and finished with the thinnest layer possible. It took him 3 full days to get to this point. The core of the Ondal construction was completed, but he had to postpone the opportunity to test it. Excuse me, Master Lloyd? When I was happy seeing the newly made Ondal floor, a servant came inside. The Lord is looking for you. The Lord, Baron Arco's front terra. It was his father's call. No way. Suddenly, he had to go. Lloyd left the unfinished Ondal room. The gossips and chatterings of the spectators, who had gathered in groups of 2s and 3s, stopped at once. Lloyd passed through the awkward silence and headed for the Baron's mansion. I heard there's been a strange rumor going around these days. Clack. The fork moved. The iron fork picked up a crude homemade sausage. However, the Baron's hand stopped there. He didn't bring the fork to his mouth. I casted my eyes to the opposite side of the table. You're doing something in the tavern backyard, aren't you? That gaze wasn't warm. To put it bluntly, it was icy. Rather than looking at a son, he looked as if he was looking at a troublesome problem. That look in the Baron's eyes made Lloyd feel bitter again. This body has its drawbacks. The owner of this body that he owned now, Lloyd Frontera, was a typical scumbag, gambling away and doing vandalism from binge drinking and drunkenness. In addition to the unfathomable truth, he had such splendid history and karma. Maybe that was why he always had to face the prejudice from people around him. In other words, no matter what he did, people would look at him with a crooked look. What is that rascal doing this time? What kind of accident is he trying to cause? Has he lost his mind? Or is it his time to die? Please don't cause any inconvenience to the people around you, and so on. It was the same even now. Let's hear it. What are you up to this time? The Baron's voice was as cold as his gaze. As soon as I heard it, I realized. That wasn't a question. It was a reproach. Lloyd shrugged. If you've heard the rumor, you'd know. I'm making the ondal that the tavern owner ordered. Ondal room. Yes. Are you trying to fool your father with empty words, just like how you fooled the tavern's owner? I can't help it if you think so. Lloyd glossed over roughly. At this point, will you believe what I say? On the contrary, it seemed better if he would just buy useless misunderstandings. Because it was hard to persuade the Baron in front of him. It was awkward. If I talked too long for no reason, I could get caught. Somehow parents can recognize their children. I am not Lloyd Frontera. This is Kim Suho who took over this body. I was worried that I would be suspected without any reason. So I chose to avoid a deep conversation. If you have nothing to say, I'll finish my meal now. Just like the damned Lloyd did, I spoke out and focused on my meal. Before he could start talking about anything else, I thought I should just fill my stomach with the food in front of me and get up quickly. But then, the Baron's question reached his ear. Is it because of the family's situation? If you have eyes and ears, you're bound to know what's happening these days. Did you do this on purpose because you were upset about it? Does he refer to the seizure because of the swindler? As expected, the prediction was correct. But it's all right. It's just a passing windfall. It's no big deal. Who am I? I am Arcos Frontera of the family who has protected this territory for 5 generations. This father can overcome this kind of hardship in no time, so don't let it get into you too much. This father will cheer you up, so don't let it shake you either. I've heard things like that before. Suddenly Lloyd raised his head. He looked at the Baron, a handsome Middle Eastern man. But his face looked somehow exhausted. I could see my father's face that I had seen that day overlapped with his face. It's the same as it was then. It was my last vacation from the army. At that time, my father, who was suffering from investment fraud, had that same look on his face. He suddenly grabbed my hand tightly. Don't worry. It's okay. It's not a big deal. Just mind your studies. He smiled and pleaded me to do so. So I didn't know. I thought he was really okay. A year after that, I didn't know that my parents, who couldn't get out from an enormous debt, would make an extreme choice. The Baron in front of him now had the same expression as my father at that time. Lies. He was not okay. He was trying to pretend he was okay in front of his child. Tuck. Lloyd put his fork down. The thought of focusing only on eating had long since vanished. He also gave up his commitment to distance himself from the Baron for a while. And he unwittingly opened his mouth. Don't give up. I'll do my best too. If I could go back to that time a few years ago, it was something I wanted to say to my father. Then, I rose up quietly from my seat. The Baron looked at me with strange eyes. A look of determination that was different from the coldness before. The gaze felt burdensome, so I hurried off. Fortunately, the Baron didn't hold on to me. The construction continued. The ondal in the backyard of the pub quickly took shape. The gazes from the onlookers were pouring in. Amidst the misunderstandings, murmuring, and rumors, I charred the panels. It was to get a thin film of carbon coating the wood to prevent deterioration. I wasn't used to it at first, so I messed up a few. Some were so burnt that it split, and some recoiled. However, after several attempts, I got the hang of it. The key was to burn only up to 3 millimeters deep from the surface of the red pine panel. Point 3. Perfect. The panel had become durable and lighter. The water didn't soak in easily. I think this would last at least for 10 years. We weaved the roof with these panels. Vinegar was spread on the panels, dried, and covered with clay from the floor. I applied a slightly thicker sheet of layer with a damp grass and pasted it on top. Then, soybean oil was applied and resin was added to finish the waterproofing process. It was the completion of the ondal room. I lit a fire as a test for the ondal and touched the floor. This is enough. I couldn't help but smile. Now it was time to check the customers' reactions. Traditional wooden frame. It's a traditional Asian construction method by making the frame using heavy wooden logs. Gable roof. Here, it meant triangular-shaped roof. Gable's definition is referring to the triangular part of a structure. I think the author refers to sho sugiban technique. Sho sugiban is a traditional Japanese procedure of skillfully charring wood with fire to make it water-resistant. It feels hot. A pair of wrinkled hands caressed the floor. She pressed on it with her palms, then she flipped her hands over to touch it with the back of her hands. An astonished expression soon showed on her face. The cushions were put aside. Then, she rubbed her bottom onto the warm floor. A satisfied smile bloomed on the white-haired old woman's lips. Great. This is very good. She was an old woman with dementia. That was why she was more honest. Hearing the old woman's words, the tavern owner turned around to look at me. His face was also beaming with a satisfied smile. My mother is very fond of it, young master. Right? Yes. I told you so. I said I would make it the ondal room. Lloyd shrugged his shoulders. That was a relief. The ondal room was a huge success. It was a cold morning in the early spring. The air outside was very chilly because the cold snap was in full swing. However, the inside of the ondal room where the fire was lit was different. The floor was hot. Even the air felt hot. That's why the tavern owner took off his coat. Did you see the fire earlier? You can light a fire in the furnace outside the door. Once smoked properly, the heat will last for a couple of days. It really doesn't cool down as fast as it looks. A couple of days? One fire can last for 2 days. This made the tavern owner's eyes wide open. Lloyd laughed. You'll see if I'm telling you the truth. Oh, of course I believe it. Is that so? Yes. Can I be more honest? Go ahead. The truth is, I thought the young master was swindling me. Me? Swindling you. Yes. Because I never thought you'd actually make it for me. Well, I suppose so. In retrospect, Lloyd Frontera was a shitty human being. He never helped anyone in his life. He didn't want anything to do with other people's life. So, even the tavern owner wouldn't have believed me either. But, contrary to my opinion, you really made this wonderful ondal. I swear I'd never seen anything like this before in my life. Is that so? Yes. I don't know how to thank you. Thanks to you, my mother really loves it. All hail the ondal, indeed. Mother, are you watching? There's a Korean nationalist fluttering vigorously here. The soaring embarrassment caused me to suddenly cough. TL/N. Here, the author used gukbangi, which can be read as gukpangi. Gukpong is used to pejoratively describe a Korean nationalist. As a result, the word literally means intoxicated with nationalism. You don't have to thank me so much. It's a contract after all. Oh, a contract. That's right, a contract. It was a deal made by mutual agreement anyway. I built the Ondal room. The owner will write off the compensation for the damaged furniture. But this Ondal room, I think it's worth a lot more than the broken furniture. Young master, please wait a moment. The owner abruptly sprang to his feet to get what he had in mind. Soon after, the owner who went to the tavern had a leather bag in his hands. Please accept some of this. What is this? My little sincerity. Clink, clink. The leather bag was placed on the floor. A heavy sound of coins came from it. It was money. Oh my, why would you do this? Of course, Lloyd swiped the coin leather bag quickly. In return, he secretly gave him some golden tips on how to take advantage of the Ondal room as a service. You see the window here? Open the window slightly on a cool night or at dawn. Let the cold air in. Then, heat the Ondal with maximum firepower and cover it with a blanket. You can roll around in there while eating tangerines, baked potatoes, or baked sweet potatoes. Do you know what will happen? What will happen? The air is cold while your butt is hot. With this, you'll understand why when the cold and warm ocean currents meet to form a landscape, it becomes a golden fishing ground and how the fish feels in there. With his head tilted because he was confused, the tavern owner saw me out of the Ondal room. There were a lot of spectators around. Everyone in this territory was still chattering among themselves while looking this way. They were showing some confusion and a considerable amount of curiosity at the same time. It's obvious. Unknowingly, I started laughing. All kinds of rumors about me recently came to my mind. The young master is crazy. He's digging a grave to commit suicide. He's openly scamming the tavern owner. There wasn't even a single good rumor. But the Ondal room was finished in front of everyone. All of the baseless rumors were negated before their eyes. This would make all of you even more curious. It looks like I built a building, but you can't even fathom what it is used for and why the owner loves it so much. In fact, it was Lloyd who purposefully sat by and watched the rumors spread. He had no reason to stop the hearsays. No, it was rather beneficial, because it's also a form of publicity. Advertising is important. Promotion is life. Plus, construction is not an exception. It was all the more so in Korea. If you build an apartment, it all will start with an advertisement. Broadcast advertising, flyers, outdoor advertising, and telemarketing were basic. The internet and social media viral ads were also naturally an option. We simply did everything we could. As such, I hit a big commercial and dragged out the aggro. Thanks to that, people are gathering like clouds on the model house's opening day. Because of this, there was no shortage of new construction applications. It became a so-called business. Lloyd thought that this was the case too right now. Thanks to the rumors, we've got this many people gathered without paying for an advertisement. Opportunities like this are rare. Even now, the residents were still looking over this way. There seemed to be over 100 people. In Lloyd's eyes, they didn't appear as permanent residents of the territory. Instead, they were potential sales applicants. In other words, they were possible customers who would devote their money to him. From now on, the model house is open. He stood before the spectators. Everyone's eyes were focused on him. He cleared his throat and said, "Aren't all of you curious about what I had made?" Of course, nobody answered. Everyone just moved their eyes to look around. Lloyd grinned. Not bad. This was an expected response. Then, there was no need for long words. Then, go inside in order and check it out for yourself. He approached the people with big strides. Then, he grabbed the sleeves of a woman who stood in the front. he took the white-haired woman inside the Andal room, because word of mouth started from the ladies in the neighborhood. With the consent of the tavern owner, he gave her a tour. The woman's eyes widened at the heated floor. After that, there was no turning back. The crowd of spectators visited and experienced the Andal room one by one. When they went in, the doubting look on their face was changed into admiration. Outside, they were greeted by a table set up by Lloyd. It was a contract table for the pre-sale of Andal room construction. How was the Andal room? Well, it's a lot better than I thought. Right? Yes. I think I won't have to worry about the cold in the middle of winter. That's why I've prepared something. Do you want to see it? This one. This is a simple conceptual map. It's kind of a pamphlet. Lloyd held the paper for the residents to look at. In fact, it was actually a pamphlet he made last night for this very moment. 2 types of Andal rooms were beautifully drawn on the pamphlet. Type A, like the Andal room you just saw, is a separate building in the yard. Type B is in the form of remodeling the first floor of your existing house. If you choose to combine the 2 together, you'll get 10% off the price as a service. You have children at home, don't you? Yes, the older one is 7 years old, while the younger one is 5 years old. Doesn't it hurt your heart to see your children shivering in the house in winter, crying and coughing with their eyes burning while huddled together in front of the fireplace? My heart ached just thinking about it. And if we sign a contract right now, 5 bundles of firewood will be provided free of charge as a special service for the opening of the sale. Think about it. This is a rare opportunity. Excuse me, but I don't think. Why? You don't want it. The man slammed his mouth shut. Lloyd knew what he was thinking inside. Because you don't trust me. Come and read on our website Wuxiao World site. Thanks. No, it was because he was scared. In a way, it was obvious. Even if I was different now, people didn't know. In their eyes, I was just Lloyd Frontera, the bastard of the barony, a scumbag who always acted out whenever he drank alcohol. So there's no way you'd believe I'm going to make a decent Andal room for you. Maybe you think I was scamming you. Maybe you think all of this was a joke. That's why you hesitated to sign the contract. However, this level of reaction was already expected by Lloyd. So what? You're not gonna sign. Really? Is that so? He stared into the man's eyes. The man flinched. The message he sent with his gaze, the man noticed it. If you don't sign a contract here, your future in the territory will be in jeopardy. You'll feel so anxious. Lloyd swallowed his bitter smile. It was a bit mean to exploit the anxiety and fear of the people. But for now, this was also the best way. If I'm hated for being a trash anyway, it wouldn't be a bad idea to use that image. It's not like I will just take the down payment and not build it. The beginning is important. If I could just win a contract somehow, then I was confident I would make a good word of mouth. So, even if it's a bit low now, I thought that I should just make proper use of Lloyd's notoriety. Oh, I see. A rational determination to not be deceived. A fear of the impending misfortune. The man who had been at odds between the two of them finally made up his mind. With a reluctant expression, he signed the contract. The same was true for the next resident, and so was for the next resident. Of course, Lloyd was confident he could change that expression on their face in the future. That's just how efficient the Andal is. It was a conclusion he had come to after some investigation over the past few days. This was due to the fireplace's limitations, the territory's own heating method. The fireplace is less heat efficient than it looks. It's only warm around the fireplace. The air heats up and cools down quickly. The heat doesn't stay indoors for too long. Plus the ashes, smoke, and soot were making eyes feel like burning during winter. It's tricky to manage because you can't just use any type of firewood. Not just that, the person who guards the fire from going out should stay awake and watch the fire all night long. Andal, on the other hand, It can counterbalance most of these shortcomings. Lloyd was sure about that, so he threatened the residents with confidence. Thanks to this, his business was able to win better than expected pre-sale contracts before the end of the afternoon. There were 32 contracts for Type A and 57 contracts for Type B. The heavy down payment was a bonus. This is amazing. Of course, it wasn't a lot of money. It was far from enough to settle the Baron's debt right away. But what was important was what will happen after this. Even though they've been forced a little bit to sign a contract, if I could finish the construction of the Ondal well within the territory, there will definitely be good rumors. We can even reach the other lands from this area. Branding the Ondal construction as well as running a heating room business around this territory. That was Lloyd's primary plan and goal. Phew. When I finished calculating my future plans, I sighed. Suddenly, I turned back to look behind me. It was sunset with the sky tinged red. Javier was following me with the sunset behind him. Hey you. You're strong, aren't you? Yes. Somehow. Then, how about being a human forklift or crane? Pardon. You said you're strong. Can't you use that strength to dig the ground or heave logs away? It was an honest wish. Javier had an enormous level of strength and talent. Naturally, he had the power to go beyond human limitations. What if Javier was playing the role of a heavy equipment in the field? Construction would be simpler and faster in the future. In other words, the efficiency of the construction would increase. More constructions would be possible to be carried out in the same time period. With this, the income will come pouring faster. However, Javier shook his head without even thinking twice. I refuse. Why? The duty the Lord gave me is to protect Lloyd Nim's personal safety at all times. So you can't be a construction worker? That's correct. But you have helped me so far, haven't you? I think it was to help the tavern owner's mother. Was it to protect the weak? Yes, but Lloyd Nim's request just now is different. You're not going to help me on my personal business? That's right. You're firm. You're welcome. I knew it. He was a person who would flatly refuse one. Lloyd smacked his lips. But we still need heavy equipment. The difference with and without construction equipment was really big. In severe cases, the construction period might take more than 10 times longer. No, the type of the construction which can be attempted also depends on the presence or absence of construction equipment. The range of the options available would change. If you want to make a lot of money, you have to get a big construction job. Now, I was satisfied with the Ondal room. However, I couldn't stay on this level forever. There would be a limit to the money earned only from the Ondal construction project. I don't want to have to repay the debt until I'm old. Then this would be difficult. In Korea, I was a mess because of money. It was truly a no-no for me to experience the same thing until the rest of my life here. So, in order to start a proper construction project and pay all of the debts, I have to solve the construction equipment problem. While on the way to the mansion, his worries continued to deepen. That was why Lloyd didn't realize that Javier's icy eyes were watching him. The temperature of the gaze was slightly different than before. I can't figure him out. Javier felt a little confused. His gaze turned to look at Lloyd's back. The eldest son of Baron Frontera, Lloyd Frontera. He was the son of the lord whom he served. He had also been the subject of his escort for the past few months. That was why it was even more confusing. Was this drunkard originally like this? Lloyd was a total mess. It wasn't only in his own eyes that were strict in every way, but also in the eyes of ordinary people. He had no patience. There were no expectations in him regarding manners or decency. He was just a rascal who drank alcohol every day and lived for nothing, even on the day when the family's properties were seized. Honestly, I hated him. No, I still am. The more I knew him, the less I liked him. Had he not been the Lord's son, I might have cut him. A mortal who was inwardly an abhorrent being inside. Literally a human garbage. At least until a few days ago, he certainly was. But he has changed. All of a sudden. Maybe it was from a few days ago, after he made a ruckus at his regular pub. It was probably when he woke up the next morning. Javier was still able to remember when Lloyd woke up that morning. I only called him twice, and he woke up. It was an unimaginable feat before. That human-speaking son of a bitch even remembered my name for the first time. And these were just the beginning. He visited the tavern owner and comforted him. He promised to make an Ondal room for him instead of paying for the compensation. Until then, I thought he was scheming something new. But I was wrong. He really built an Ondal room. He kept his word with the tavern owner. It didn't stop there. He also signed a contract to build an Ondal room for the gathered residents. To make money?
No.
Money is just an excuse. Somehow, I had that feeling. There seemed to be a bigger goal. Of course, I couldn't guess what the goal was. However, what was certain was that the actions didn't seem for personal gains. It's as if you've become someone else overnight. His tone changed. His expression and attitude had also changed. He displayed an ability he had never learned. He designed a new building and introduced a new heating system. I became even more confused. Did you really become someone else? But no matter how much I look at him or how long I keep observing him, the man who was walking a step ahead of me was clearly the lout Lloyd Frontera. So you've been hiding something like this until now? In fact, that was the only way to explain this. It would make sense if this was the case. The Baron lived a peaceful life. But when crisis struck the family, he showed his real self. It occurred to me that maybe it was the truth. Of course, it's still too early to conclude. Let's stick to my duties for now. And if possible, let's keep an eye on this scumbag. Javier Azrahan vowed to do so. Once again, he engraved Lloyd's back, who walked ahead, to his retina. At that moment, Lloyd, who was walking ahead, came face to face with an unexpected message that popped into his mind. Ding dong. Javier Azrahan's favorability towards you has increased by +2. Your current relationship with Javier Azrahan, -29. A slight improvement in your relationship with a key character earned you 36 RP. Current RP, 36. You can develop your skills by investing the acquired RP. What the hell is this? A string of messages appeared in the air in front of him. Lloyd's eyes widened as he read them. Javier Azrahan's favorability towards you has increased by +2. Your current relationship with Javier Azrahan, -29. A slight improvement in your relationship with a key character earned you 36 RP. Current RP, 36. You can develop your skills by investing the acquired RP. What the hell is this? A string of messages appeared in the air. Somehow, it wasn't strange. When I first came here, I already saw these. Was it when Javier woke him up for the first time? At that time, I think I heard about RP blah blah blah. I thought it was just a silly dream. Looking at it now, it didn't seem to be that. Anyway, this was absurd. What is skill and what is RP? Favorability? Improving relationships with key characters. Lloyd's eyes moved quickly. He repeatedly checked the messages which were floating in the air in front of him. It wasn't that difficult to understand. Javier's favorability has gone up and the relationship has improved a bit? That must be why I got something called RP, which could be used to develop my skills. Lloyd stopped walking. He looked back at Javier. Hey. Yes. What were you thinking? I don't know what you mean. By any chance, have you ever badmouthed or judged me inside your heart? Something like, oh, that guy was a total garbage, but now I see he's not as trashy as I thought. I've never done any of that. Yes, you have. Never. Really? Didn't you think of me as the perfect specimen of human garbage before? I did. With a serious look on his face, Javier spoke. There's no such thing as pure garbage anywhere in the world. No matter how messed up a human being is, they will have a very faint sense of humanity somewhere in the corner of their heart. That's what I think. Ah, that's kinda comforting. Once again, Javier had seemed to display his peculiar talent of putting every single ounce of painful straightforwardness into his words with great care, even while he himself was unaware of it. Come on, let's go home. I resumed my steps. When I arrived at the Baron's mansion, Javier was sent to his quarters. After I was alone, I locked the bedroom door. Earnestly, I opened the earlier messages related to skills. The way to open it was simple. Skill window. I tried it just in case. Loading the skill window. Wow, it really works. I thought something novel-like had happened since I entered the novel. But the reality here was much more novel-like than I expected. Lloyd gazed at the skill window that came up before him with admiration. List of currently available skills. Survey knowledge to grasp terrain and space detected. Soil mechanics knowledge detected. Mathematical knowledge detected. The skills above are integrated and can be developed with basic survey skill. RP required to develop equals 15. What? Survey. It was literally the foundation of civil engineering. Surveying the terrain and space before designing the structure. That was the beginning of all construction. But you can turn survey into a skill? The type of skills that could be cultivated seemed to depend largely on the knowledge or talent he originally possessed. Looking at the ever-coming messages, Lloyd was convinced that was the truth. Material dynamics knowledge detected. Statics knowledge to deal with stationary objects detected. Structural mechanics knowledge detected. Water supply and sewage theory knowledge detected. Steel structure and concrete design knowledge detected. Extensive knowledge and experience with $1 Canadian programs detected. The skills above are integrated and can be developed with basic design skill. RP required to develop equals 20. Design in addition to survey. Both of them were topics I studied tirelessly at school. Lloyd unconsciously clenched his fists. This is a jackpot. Even so, he was about to start the construction business. In order to settle the Baron's debt, to make a lot of money. In the future, he was even considering launching a large-scale civil engineering project. What was needed most were precise measurements and design. However, I don't have that kind of equipment here. I can't even dream about GPS surveying too. And for the design, there were no other options. The blueprint of the Ondal room had to be drawn by hand. At that moment, I missed CAD, which was used conveniently in Korea. All of these steps could be done entirely with the skills I was equipped with. Lloyd boldly decided. Basic survey and basic design. Let's develop them both. First, I invested 15 RP into basic survey. The reaction was immediate. Basic survey skill has been upgraded. Skill name. Basic survey. Consumes a small amount of mana. It's possible to calculate the terrain, area, and height of the land observed by the eye accurately. In addition, you can get a rough idea of the nature of the soil and water that forms the topographic surface. Area that can be surveyed at once. 100 square meters. Is this for real? Lloyd rubbed his eyes. He could measure an area of 10 meters by length and width at a time with a naked eye. Even the nature of the soil and water within range could be identified manually. This was a fraudulent ability. Let's check it out first. I opened the bedroom windows. My bedroom just happened to be on the second floor. I glanced down at the courtyard of the mansion below. While looking around the courtyard, I activated my skill. Basic survey. Start surveying. A message popped up. At the same time, some of my vision changed like augmented reality. 10 meters in width. 10 meters in length. Numerous numbers and information emerged over the terrain inside the range. Oh my God. It felt like I had a 3D map device installed inside my head. By investing 20 RP, the basic design skill also got upgraded. Basic design skill has been upgraded. Skill name, Basic Design. Consumes a small amount of mana. Recall contents of the desired designs, drawing in the form of three-dimensional points, lines, and sides. Automatically detect and correct any physical property errors in the drawing. Volume of the structure that can be recalled at once, 1,000 cubic meters. I'll also test this. Immediately, I activated the skill. A virtual black space was formed in the air in front of my eyes. The points, lines, and sides were free to manipulate. I could even recall the terrain I've just grasped from the basic survey skill. This was literally like CAD's design program, but the future 3D hologram version, which is devoid of any restrictions. Oh my god. Crazy, this is crazy. At this point, I was going to faint from being too excited. This is what it feels like to be a god in architecture. Of course, the size of the area and volume from these two skills is still a little bit small. This would naturally be solved when the skills were upgraded later. However, Lloyd felt a little disappointed. It would have been better if I had a talent related to heavy equipment and construction equipment. If that was the case, producing construction equipment would be possible. But he didn't have that skill. He was a civil engineer, not a mechanical engineer. Lloyd looked around the skill window while smacking his lips regretfully. Then, suddenly his eyes stopped at one place. What is this? Random summon of phantom species. Invest your RP to summon your phantom species. A powerful and personalized phantom that will offer its absolute loyalty to the master who summoned it and provides a variety of capabilities. It was written in the instruction panel. Is this some kind of a lucky draw? Like the one in mobile games? There were so many different things I wanted to try if it was possible. However, I couldn't. It was because the remaining RP was insufficient. One pull equals 50 RP. Geez, I can't believe it. I just spent most of my RP to develop 2 skills. So, the remaining RP should be only 1. I need to collect more RP. The method was already known. To gain favor from important characters around me by improving my relationships with them. Actually, there were quite a few ways to do it. Especially at this time of the year. Now is exactly the time. Suddenly I recalled the contents of the novel. The very beginning of Iron-Blooded Night. The days when Javier still worked at the barony. Baron Frontera was severely troubled by the debtors who visited almost every day. Maybe even today as well. I summoned a servant and inquired quietly. The servant nodded. Oh, yes, young master. However, the guests dropped by to visit the Lord a moment ago. As expected. You are guests at these times. Lloyd grinned. Look at the timing. Just in time, since I have the perfect present for you. Exactly when I happen to need it. A good idea to get more RP occurred to me. Leaving the bedroom, Lloyd headed to the Baron's office. What do you want me to do, the hell? As he approached the front door of the office, an uproar echoed down the hallway. Maybe it was because the mansion was old and not soundproofed. Or maybe because the disturbances inside were louder than you think. It wasn't until Lloyd opened the door that he knew the answer was the latter. How long are you going to delay it, Baron? Hasn't it already been 5 days since the promised date? That's right. If you keep on stalling like this, we won't give you any more chance. There were 2 debtors who came. A man with a bulging belly and a thin-skinned man with a sickly complexion. Both of them were standing with their chins raised and hands at their waists. Baron Frontera, on the other hand, he was sitting on the chair in the office, while sighing deeply. Somehow, his expression and sagging shoulders were like a man who had sinned. That's understandable. The pot-bellied man and skinny man who came to visit the Baron today were vicious loan sharks. They never gave up the money they could get. Even when the debtor died, they were the kind of people who made money by selling the corpse. Of course, They did it and were decapitated by Javier in the end. It was a future yet to come. This would happen a year later, after the Baron commits suicide. TSK. How could you borrow money from people like that? Without realizing it, I clicked my tongue. I took a step forward and uttered with a subdued voice. No matter what anyone says, Baron Frontera is the owner of this territory. If you came here as guests, where are your proper manners? Only then did they realize my existence. The two loan sharks turned to look at me. The Baron raised his head, which was bowing deeply. Lloyd. The Baron's startled voice was heard. I bowed slightly towards him. The pot-bellied person tilted his head and interjected. Who are you? The eldest son of this family. The eldest son? That's right. Aha! The eldest son whose conduct was very unique. Thanks to that, I am kind of famous. Is that why you interrupted like this while the adults were talking? It was for the honor of the Baron's family, the owner of this territory. Then, what's the big deal? How come? I'm afraid the landowner will change soon. We'll see if it changes or not. He chuckled. First, let's see your invitation letter. What? The pot-bellied man's eyebrows twitched. I said while sneering at him even more. Is there no invitation? What kind of invitation are you talking about in this situation? The Royal Family and Nobility Act, Article 3, Clause 6. All nobles of the kingdom, regardless of status and rank, have the right and honor to be the vassal of the king. The nobility can exercise their rights to protect their interests. What? Strictly speaking, on the basis of the Royal Family and Nobility Act, I am saying that visiting the residence of the nobility without an invitation can be considered as trespassing under the law. Well, so we're trespassing right now? Oh, do you understand now? Clap, clap, I clapped my hands. In reality, who will keep that decree? However, it was a law that actually existed. I reminisced about the scene from the beginning of Iron-Blooded Night abruptly. Shortly after Baron Frontera and his wife committed suicide, a funeral was held in the Baron's mansion. The two loan sharks came to the funeral. The Baron couple's bodies were to be sold by them, so they demanded to dig them out. That was when Javier pulled out his sword and recited that law with his mouth. He cut them down with one strike. Later, Javier was put on trial. Fortunately, there was no punishment. It was a fact that the decree existed and the two loan sharks did come without an invitation, plus they were acting too much. Of course, that was not the case right now, so I can't kill them. It was good to kick them out instead. So, you have to get going now. Next time you visit, learn some etiquette. You don't think there'll be any trouble at this rate? We'll see about that. The two loan sharks growled. I did the same. They left the Baron's office, trembling mad. I saw them off with a sneer on their back. Only then did I hear Baron Frontera's bewildered voice. Now, what have you done? When I turned around, the Baron's face was completely frozen. Yeah, it was reasonable. I have provoked and kicked out the debtors who came in a desperate bid, while I should have appeased them. A bitter smile came out. Those guys were like hyenas. Bitter memories when in South Korea also came to mind. Parents who had been tangled in an investment scam. Debtors who had been coming every day. The back of my father became smaller day by day due to suffering from the harassment. Never again. I'll never be like that ever again. The weaker you are, the more you get beaten. Especially against those guys. Nevertheless, at present, the Baron wasn't in that situation. Being confident in a tight situation is a lot harder than you think. No, in reality, it's practically almost impossible. Answer me. What did you just do? Before I knew it, the Baron's face was distorted. Perhaps his thoughtless son was misled and thought he had done things wrong. In this case, it was better to show him than explain with a dozen words. I pulled my money bag out of my arms and put it on the Baron's desk. There was a heavy clattering sound. Don't worry. What? This should be enough to pay this month's interest. Take care of it with this. They'll be quiet for the time being. This. What is this? It was the down payment from the sale of the Ondal room today. Even so, he didn't explain it himself. Because at least, there was someone more trustworthy than this one. If you're curious, call Sir Azrahan and listen. I bowed my head to the Baron and quickly left the office. Phew. The breath I'd been holding burst out at once. With a shake of my head, I calmed my beating chest. I didn't head to the bedroom. I headed to the training ground in the backyard instead. The moonlight shone over the empty training ground. I lingered there for a moment and waited. About an hour had passed. It's about time for a reaction to happen. It was time, I think. Finally, the long-awaited reaction came. Ding dong. Baron Arco's front terra's favorability towards you has increased by +6. Your current relationship with Baron Arco's front terra, -14. Improvement in your relationship with a key character earned you 60 RP. Current RP, 61. There we go. I clenched my fists excitedly. As expected, the Baron must have called for Javier. I'm sure you've heard of my recent developments through Javier's explanation. It went according to the plan. Explaining what you did well yourself would be less effective. This is especially true if the good deed was revealed by the man who used to behave like a bully. Good job, Javier. Javier would have explained it coldly and objectively. Probably that was why I was confident in his explanation. Thanks to you, I accumulated 61 RP. It was worth it to wait at the deserted training ground on purpose. Finally, the time had come to summon the first phantom. CD, computer-aided design, using computers to aid in the creation, modification, analysis, or optimization of a design. GPS surveying, GPS, Global Positioning System, is a satellite-based navigation system. In other words, GPS surveying is when you use GPS to survey the land. It uses similar technology with nearly all GPS applications, but with more sophisticated technology and different kinds of data collected. The data will be collected, stored, manipulated, and displayed in a GIS, Geographic Information Survey, to be used in a survey model. My heart was full of gratitude. It was thanks to the message which appeared in my mind. Javier must have explained what had been going on recently in a cool and objective way. Javier, the protagonist in the novel Iron-Blooded Knight, was a cool-headed fellow all the time. Never panicked or wavered under any circumstances. He tried to be objective in everything. That must have been the case a little while ago. Everything that had happened, including what I had been doing and what I had done, must have been informed calmly to the Baron by him. That's a relief. The Baron didn't think I'm weird. In fact, it was a bit of a gamble. He was a son who only made a mess every day. Then, out of the blue, he showed knowledge that he had never learned anywhere before. The Ondal room, which didn't exist in this place, had been made in a large amount. Not only that, he started making money by signing construction contracts with the residents of the fief. This situation was suspicious enough. However, he didn't get suspicious. Of course, he would have pondered, but I guess he felt more joy than anything else. Because originally, that's what parents want. His child has changed for the better. Almost every parent in the world would feel joyful first in such a situation. On another hand, it was uncomfortable to take advantage of such psychology. Still, I couldn't help it right now. For the time being, let's just observe. Right now is the time to choose benefit rather than conscience. It was the time to seek profit through practical means. Otherwise, my poverty-stricken life could occur once again, like when I was in the Republic of Korea. Filled with determination, Lloyd looked around again. A cascade of moonlight was pouring down onto the training ground. Fortunately, I didn't sense another human being around. I took a deep breath and opened the status window. Waves of information rose before my eyes. Among them, there was a place that caught my eyes. Random summon of phantom species. Invest your RP to summon your phantom species. A powerful and personalized phantom that will offer its absolute loyalty to the master who summoned it and provides a variety of capabilities. One pull equals 50 RP. Do you want to do a random summon? Yes/no. Naturally, the choice was yes. I nodded. A random summon of phantom species will be done. 50 RP was consumed along with the notice. At the same time, a change occurred on the ground 5 steps ahead. A pale light was engraved to the ground. The engraved light drew a complex shape. The complete magic circle exudes mysterious energy. It's coming out. I've seen this a lot in mobile games, but it felt a little different seeing it in real life. No, it was very different. It just couldn't be compared to 3D effects. There was this feeling that something will really come out from there. As I watched it, my heart was pounding. Finally, something came out. Something sprang out from the ground accompanied by an intense shock wave. Soon, it flew over here and fell into my arms. Soft, fluffy hair. A plump but with short limbs. And yet, he's smaller than half a fist. So, this is a hamster. Why did a hamster emerge from there? Ah, are you the one that came out from there? The hamster nodded his head as if it was natural. Lloyd stared down at him in a daze. This is a phantom. I tried to summon while consuming a whole 50 RP. However, the only thing that came out was a hamster that no matter how you look at it, it seems like a pet. But Lloyd didn't panic. Rather, he calmly collected his mind. Phantom species are said to offer a wide range of abilities. First of all, this guy understands what I'm saying and answers me. This means he's not an ordinary hamster. That wasn't all. Somehow, I could understand this guy's answer. In conclusion, having a dialogue was possible. I put the hamster on my palm. Face to face, I asked him, "Hey,
Podonk.
do you have any special abilities?"
Pododonk.
You said you were a phantom?
Podonk.
So, why don't you give me some evidence that shows you're a phantom species?
Pododonk. Podonk.
He put his hand into his mouth. Then, he pulled something out of his cheek pocket and held it out. It was a small envelope and a crumpled paper slip in the size of a business card.
Podonk. Pododonk.
Are you giving this to me?
Podonk donk.
Read the note.
Podonk.
I opened the note. There, I could see words inscribed on it. Fortunately, the moon was bright, so I could read the contents. Podong's user manual. Podong is an adorable hamster. Please take care of him with lots of love. As his summoner, Podong is absolutely loyal to you. Phantoms are lifelong pet companions and family members. Please don't throw it away. Feed Podong 1 out of 2 kinds of enclosed sunflower seeds and his size will change. Red sunflower seeds. Makes Podong bigger. Maximum retention time equals 12 hours. Blue sunflower seeds. Makes Podong smaller. Please feed him before he exceeds the maximum retention time of gigantification. After 12 hours without eating a blue sunflower seed, Podong automatically returns to his small appearance. However, he will get exhausted and gigantification will be impossible for 24 hours. The 2-color sunflower seed set is 1 RP. Podong can use a variety of skills when in giant state. Digging, LV1. Packing dirt, LV1. Cheek pockets, LV1. Digging the ground and packing it. No way. Does that mean he plays the role of an excavator? After reading the manual, Lloyd opened the enclosed envelope. As expected, the envelope contained sunflower seeds. There are 10 red and 10 blue seeds. Lloyd looked at the hamster. No, Podong. Hey.
Podonk.
Do you get bigger if you eat this?
Podonk.
How big?
Pododonk.
Tremendously.
Podonk.
How much bigger is it? This guy, he's so small. Size is a relative concept. I wondered how big he would grow if he got bigger here. Even if he's just as big as a human being, he would be really useful. I've never had a hamster. However, I had heard that hamsters are great at digging tunnels. That's why I had high expectations that if he was the size of a human being, he could do a few people's work at once. Let's check it first then.
Podąg.
Let's put you down first.
Pododąg.
I put him on the ground. Then, I held out the sunflower seeds. Would you like to try some of this?
Podąg.
Smells good, doesn't it?
Pododąg. Podąg.
Here, it's going to be delicious.
Podąg.
He sniffed the sunflower seed. When I gave him the red sunflower seed, he put it in his small mouth and chewed. In the meantime, Lloyd stepped back a few steps. How big will it be? With half expectation and half concern, I looked at Podong. And the moment Podong swallowed the red sunflower seed he had been chewing, ta! He got bigger, approximately 10 meters in size. Whoa! Awesome! Lloyd raised his head in disbelief. Podong, whose face was far above me, has transformed into a giant hamster. If I hadn't stepped back enough, I might have gotten hit by him and flown away like a ball. It was an instant gigantification, just like popcorn when it pops, or like an airbag when it's deployed. His volume rapidly increases at once. Then, what if I didn't clear the streets properly? People could get hit by his growing body and fly away, just like a car accident. Let's be careful next time. With a firm resolution, I looked up at Podong. Anyway, now I need to test this guy's performance. Hey, can you hear me?
Podąg.
His enormous head looked down my way. Fortunately, his eyes still looked innocent. I didn't have to worry about being eaten. Would you like to start digging?
Pododąg.
From here to there, can you make it 2 meters deep evenly?
Podąg. Pododąg.
He nodded his head. While stumbling on his huge, fluffy buttocks, he moved to the position I just pointed out. Then, he began to move his 2 short paws. At almost the speed of light.
Pododododąg.
Wabba-babba-bat. It was a storm of dirt. Piles of soil sprang up explosively. Between that, his bulky figure advanced without hesitation. After about 3 minutes had passed, a huge furrow of 2 meters deep and 20 meters long was made in the yard. Whoa. This was beyond my imagination. This was also beyond my expectations. However, Lloyd quickly got rid of his admiration. There was no time to be amazed, because I don't know when anyone's gonna see this. Finish the test as quickly and efficiently as possible. Thinking so, Lloyd said. Good job. Next is packing the ground.
Podąg.
Refill the furrows you just made, as flat as possible.
Pododąg.
Can you do it?
Podąg.
He moved immediately. Positioning himself in front of the furrow he just made, he shook his bouncy buttocks and spread his front paws wide. Then, he moved left and right like a hurricane. If the move from a moment ago was just like a storm of soil, this move was like a vacuum cleaner. His supple buttocks became his center of gravity. Using the butt as a firm weight, his upper body moved quickly from side to side. Earlier, he dug the ground and splattered soil all over the place. Now, he pushed it back into the furrow. Advancing without an ounce of hesitation, every step forward, the furrow was filled up. However, that wasn't the end.
Pododąg.
The guy who filled up the furrow until the end laid himself down. Then, he began to roll along the furrow. Once forward, once backward. That was enough. His heavy and chubby sides literally flattened the ground like a giant road roller. Thanks to him rolling back and forth, the uneven ground has been smoothed out. Not even a trace that a furrow was dug left. Good. Very good. The more I saw it, the more satisfied I was. The 50 RP invested to summon him felt worth it. Thank goodness. I was in a bit of a sensitive situation while collecting RP. I deliberately visited the Baron who was in dispute with the debtors. Then, I appealed to him by talking a little too much. All of it was to increase the Baron's favorability. It's worth the risk of being questioned. Then, let's test your final skill. Lloyd looked up at Padong, who was proud to see the furrow he had filled. Hey, Padong.
Podonk.
Do you have cheek pockets?
Podonk.
Can you store stuff in there?
Pododonk. Podonk.
Is it possible? How much?
Podonk.
He pointed his front foot to the other side of the courtyard. There laid a rock 2 meters in diameter. Lloyd's eyebrows twitched. Really? But that was the truth. Before I could have said anything, he moved and put the rock inside one of his cheek pockets. Whoa. Are you okay? With a proud face, he nodded. Each time, the swollen cheek pockets which were used to hold a 2-meter-long rock bounced powerfully. He could use it as a weapon. He's totally a tank. Yes, a tank. Literally 10 meters big. Seeing this big guy in front of me, I wondered if this was what looking at dinosaurs felt like. The elephant I saw at the zoo once before felt like a local puppy compared to Padong. Now, then, put that rock back in its place. Perdung? Tui. Well done. Now, would you like to try this?
Podonk.
I put a blue sunflower seed into his mouth. In no time, he swallowed the seed and became smaller. Hug. I took the little one into my arms. He felt sleepy, so he came into my inside pocket. Feeling that little touch and warmth, Lloyd thought, success. This is a jackpot. I recapped Podong's images that I just saw inside my mind. To be honest, the result was beyond expectations. He dug up a 20 meters long and 2 meters deep furrow in only 3 minutes. It was perfectly flattened, and he stored a few tons of rock in one cheek pocket. High-performance excavator, the perfect road roller, plus equipped with a dump truck. This felt like getting a MacGyver of the heavy equipment world, 3 functions in one body. With this ability, it was worth spending RP to buy sunflower seeds for the transformation. In addition, he's very portable. Before I knew it, Padong was fast asleep in my inner pocket. Perhaps, for the time being, I have to hide this guy. I'll have to carry a summoning scroll around with me in case people see him in public. That much bait should be sprinkled. That way, the Barony's people will not be suspicious when I suddenly summoned a giant hamster one day. Rather, they will shout, "Our master is the best." So, he left the training ground with Padong in his arms. Back in the bedroom, I thought about what was next. Finally, I have heavy construction equipment to use. Then, the next step will be a full-scale construction. The pre-sale of Ondal rooms during the day was successful. It's best to strike while the iron's hot. Going with the momentum, I'm going to start a construction industry. I need a professional construction team to do that. The engineers and elite workers who could move in perfect order in the field, and the talents who will lead them. Of course, I had to think about the formation of the construction team in advance. The fire in the bedroom's fireplace burned all night long. In front of it, Lloyd held up a paper and a pen. Bringing back my memories, I began to make a list of all the main characters who appeared in the early part of the Iron-Blooded Knight novel. That was a monumental moment when the ordinary knights and guards of Frontterra Barony first turned into a full-fledged labor-style combat unit. The Barony of Frontterra, an ordinary rural area in the corner of the Lauratian continent. The Barony's troop size was beyond small. No, it was so small that it was shabby. In total, there were only 5 knights and 100 soldiers. Even then, those men's capabilities were like a chaotic vigilante corps. That was the status of Baron Frontterra's forces, as mentioned in the Iron-Blooded Knight novel. However, from this day onward, you all will be reborn as elites in this field. It was a sunny morning, the perfect weather to start the construction. Highlighted by the sunlight, Lloyd looked back at the 80 soldiers who gathered by the river and said, "Here, I need you to diligently scoop and transport these." His hand pointed to one side of the river. There was an awful lot of clay. Originally, the clay was buried beneath the ground. However, I managed to dig it all up. Thanks to Padong. This dawn, I went here secretly. In just 30 minutes, I made Padong transform and created a large-scale clay excavation site. When morning came, I brought 80 soldiers from the territory here. The purpose was to transport clay from the excavation site to the construction site. I looked around at the soldiers. You must be wondering what all of this is about. You wondered why I mobilized you for this kind of work, didn't you? But this is how the military is supposed to be. What's the point of an army? Of course it's to work and work. The Republic of Korea's army was like that. Combat training to defend the country? That one was important too. However, the reality was a little bit different. Constructing a drainage ditch in the military encampment, what to construct today, and what else to build tomorrow. Every time I had a break, I spent it by working and working. So, my military life had gone by just like that. I felt as if I was always summoned by the squadron administrator when I was in the military. This was the reason. He wanted the soldiers here to experience that too. Just to bully them? No, that's not it. It's physical training through labor. Clay is heavy. What if you walk around with a sack full of clay to transport it? Not only the lower body, but also the core of the abdomen, shoulders, back, as well as forearm muscles will be trained. While at it, improving your endurance was a bonus. This so-called labor builds up muscles. Thinking so, Lloyd said. Anyway, today, for the revival of this territory, we will be doing the first small but precious shoveling activity. It'll be used for the fief residence Ondal room construction project. That means you'll be transporting the clay from here to the construction site. Ah, yes, young master. Several soldiers reluctantly responded. Lloyd snickered. Okay, so let's start with stretching. Pardon. Do you want to get hurt while working? If you excessively move the materials while having a stiff body, your back could have given out and your knees could have been sprained. In that case, you're the one who would be at loss. Do you get it? This is why you need to warm up. Follow me. 1, 2. Oh, 1, 2. Your voice is too small. Make sure you repeat after me and do the movements. 1, 2. Oh, 1, 2. Lloyd was slowly warming up his body in front of the soldiers. At first, some soldiers were dumbfounded. But when Lloyd frowned, everyone started to move quickly. He was known as a notorious scoundrel. At this moment, it was time for his usual notoriety which had accumulated for so long to shine. TL/N. The author uses sarcasm and added a question mark on this sentence. The author wanted to say that finally Lloyd's bad reputation is useful in moments like this. That's why it's shining. If you get hurt because you don't warm up your body, there's no point in training. While at a construction site, stretching is more important than you think. The ground usually was uneven all over or littered with dangerous things everywhere. Like most construction sites, the condition would be poor. What if you move heavy stuff in a place like that with a stiff body? The probability of safety accidents occurring will increase. Lloyd's heart wanted to prevent such a thing from happening anyhow. I don't even have money to pay for the treatment. We could save money by preventing it. This is why I've to shout out these stupid slogans with all of my heart. After finished stretching, he assembled the soldiers in a circle and raised his hand. Follow me. Hands up. The soldiers looked around and intuitively raised their hands. Lloyd shouted, leading the chant. I like wearing safety helmets.
Tak, tak.
He hit his helmet with his palm. Soldiers repeated the safety slogan and copied the movements. Ah, I like wearing safety helmets. Well done. I like wearing safety gloves. I like wearing safety gloves. I really like wearing safety shoes. I really like. At first glance, it was a kindergarten-level childish slogan and inspection process. In fact, when Lloyd was working part-time in South Korea, he also used to think like that every morning. But now that he looked back on it, maybe this inspection process had helped him finish his part-time job safely. That was what he thought. This was why, after completing his inspection, he didn't forget to inform the soldier about safety protocols for the last time. Don't forget the safety rules. If you think you're going to forget, you should take a look at this. He picked up the sign he had made beforehand and planted it on the ground. On the sign, words were thriftily written. All workers. Let's follow the safety regulations on site. Without a safety helmet, you could get brain death, and which could perhaps make you a little bit smarter. If you hurry to do your work as if you're pressed on time, you'd become a patient with a little bit of time remaining. You're tired of using safety shoes? Yes, just so you know that your big toe is ready to achieve 3 stages of separation you'd barely manage. Do you think these are all lies? Then ignore the advice and ascend to heaven along with a handful of dioxins 1-dioxins, a group of highly toxic chemical compounds that are harmful to health. It can remain for a long time and everywhere around us. It generally is dispersed and attached to soil and dust particles, which is invisible to the eye. The soldiers were speechless. Everyone carefully touched their safety equipment without realizing it. Good. Let's get started when you're ready. Group 1 will shovel the clay and put it in a sack. Group 2 will carry the sacks. Do it. Yes, sir. The transportation work had begun. The soldiers' movements were quick, perhaps due to the intense mental education I gave just now. I was delighted to see it. They're soldiers who belong to the territory, so they're relatively obedient. I'm glad I succeeded in convincing the Baron. Out of the blue, I remembered the events that happened 2 hours ago in the morning. So, you want to mobilize the soldiers? It was the Baron's voice, inquiring. The voice was filled with curiosity. Did it include curiosity, doubt, and bewilderment? While casually continuing his breakfast, Lloyd answered, Yes. Why? I have something to do. What do you have to do to mobilize 80 soldiers? It's construction. Construction. Lloyd, who had swallowed the bread, wiped his hands on the napkin. Taking out the documents I had prepared in advance, I held them out to the Baron. This is a business plan. Business plan. Let's take a look at it. Thanks to Padong last night, I was confident I could start a full-fledged construction project. So, I wrote a business plan all night long. This business absolutely needs the Baron's cooperation. After all, this was a construction business within the territory. Therefore, the Baron's permission as the owner of this territory was a must. The same was true in terms of economics. It costs money to hire separate workers. Labor costs, or a daily wage. It was a must-paid expense at all construction sites. However, what if the Baron mobilized his private soldiers for construction? You can get it for free without having to pay anything. After all, they were soldiers who were hired and paid by the Baron. With this, we can save a lot of money. What if there are complaints among the soldiers? We can give a little bonus called a special allowance. But Ondal construction. I'm sure you've heard Javier's explanation last night. Yes, I did. The bizarre yet new heating system by heating up the stones on the floor. But why? Are you asking what my intention is? Yes. The Baron's gaze on my way was filled with questions. Fortunately, it wasn't as cold as it used to be. Maybe it's because I kicked out the debtors yesterday and gave him a sack of money. That allowed the Baron to afford this month's interest. His gaze this way was naturally bound to be warmer. Lloyd said, I wanted to raise money through the residents. Money? Yes, money to pay off the debt. At first, I was going to collect money by implementing special taxes, etc. But there's going to be a lot of backlash. Yes, that's why. I came up with a legitimate way to do it to get as little backlash as possible. So, what you came up with is the Ondal construction business. Yes, I will make money and the fief residents will be able to spend a warmer winter by paying a moderate amount of money. It's a win-win situation for each other. But something like this. The Baron's suspicious gaze turned my way. Where did you learn this? Are you talking about the Ondal? Yes, I've never seen anything like this in my life. Yet, where did you learn to do this? I've been thinking about it for a long time. Thinking. Yes. Lloyd nodded. At times like this, you have to be more brazen. He continued his words. It's just something I've been vaguely thinking about since long ago. Stones don't cool down well once heated. So, what if we put flat stones on the floor and heat it somehow with a hot heat source down there? But this time I got the opportunity to actually make it into reality, and it was better than I thought. It's warmer than I expected. The one you made for the tavern owner? Yes. So, your idea is to develop it into a business? Yes. I nodded my head as it was obvious. Actually, he was absolutely confident. However, the Baron's eyes, which looked over here, still had some suspicions that hadn't disappeared. That's right. You have thought of a good plan. This plan was very meticulous to the point of impressing me, to the point where I wondered if you really have this talent. However, the Baron questioned me, full of suspicion. Can I believe your intentions? Pardon. I mean, can I trust you? I don't know what you mean. You didn't mean to say that you have forgotten what you did 2 years ago, did you? 2 years ago. That was a part that never came out in the Iron-Blooded Knight novel. Now, it was better to not answer any confusing questions. So, Lloyd waited silently. Fortunately, the Baron opened his mouth first. It was like this back then. Of course, you didn't have a grandiose business plan like now. I still clearly remember what you said at that time. You said, "Father, this time I made up my mind to really study with all of my heart. So, trust and invest in me." I was delighted. I thought you had finally come back to your senses. Therefore, I willingly gave you the money from selling the vacation villa, to use it as an entrance fee for the academy. But you got the money, squandered, perfectly, without leaving even a dime. Along with a bunch of scoundrels you've been hanging out with for years, getting drunk and throwing a hot, dirty party with the girls. Oh, really? Lloyd, you son of a bitch. I swallowed up the curse that was about to emerge. That's a mess, all right. I didn't expect him to do that. No wonder the Baron's response was lukewarm even with the perfect business plan in front of him. Now that this body had done that much, it's natural that it's hard to believe me. The real Lloyd, you're such a piece of SHXD. With the high-level trolling the former owner of this body did, I was wondering how to resolve this situation. My brain was spinning at the speed of light. Finally, I came up with a clue to the solution. It was thanks to his past, which he had suddenly recalled. But come to think about it, I've had similar accidents but on a much smaller scale. It must have been when I was in middle school. At that time, I forgot about the money my mom gave me to pay for school tuition. I remembered playing with my friends in the PC room every evening using it. From LOL, under watch, to the war ground, it was fun. Eventually, I got caught by my mom. I got in a lot of trouble. I had to beg on my hands and feet for forgiveness. In the end, I had made an irrevocable promise so I could be forgiven by my mother. Well, that's the only way for now. Lloyd, who came up with a solution, raised his head. I looked at the Baron face to face. I promised, just like when I promised not to go to a PC room anymore to my mom that day, to the Baron. I'll quit drinking alcohol. What? I meant exactly what I said. If you believe me this time, I'll completely quit drinking. The look in the Baron's eyes became strange. He seemed to be asking if I was serious or if this was some kind of new trick. Lloyd didn't answer. He simply looked back and didn't avoid the Baron's eyes at all. He remained silent, as if answering with those calm eyes. How much time had passed by? Finally, the Baron sighed. Is that true? Yes. I can't drink well anyway. I don't really like it, so I don't have any lingering feelings about not being able to drink. Therefore, if I gave up drinking and succeeded in gaining the Baron's trust, it would be a benefit, an enormous benefit, I reckon. And, finally, all right, I get it. The Baron nodded and returned the business plan. I'll trust you just this once because you've said so much. I'll let my administrator know. In carrying out the business as written on this plan, you'll be free to use the soldiers of this territory in the future. Thank you. This will be the last time I believe you. So, please don't let me down. The Baron's eyes looked at me. Somehow, it seemed more generous than before, or it seemed a little bit sad. At that moment, I felt a little strange because it made me remember my mother's gaze from the PC room incident in an instant. Lloyd finished his meal in a hurry and left the dining table. I went through that process of learning too, but as expected. There were still many mountains to climb. At the thought, Lloyd smiled bitterly. While he was momentarily lost in thought, a knight appeared to approach him while protesting. As you can see, I am an honorable knight. The order to supervise the transportation of this pile of dirt is unacceptable, even if it's commanded by the young master. The knight was facing me. He had a mean impression. Of course, Lloyd knew the name of this knight. Sir Ulrich. The knight was the one he personally appointed as a supervisor to lead the soldiers on site today. He was one of the 5 knights of the Front Terra barony. When the Baron fell into such a predicament, he was the first person who betrayed him. He calmly stole the Baron's favorite horse and ran away. That wasn't all. Didn't he even spit on Lloyd's face when he encountered him while he was fleeing? That was why I entrusted you with this site today. I summoned him on purpose and made him lead the soldiers. It was because I expected him to protest in this way. And he lived up to my expectations. In silence, Lloyd grabbed the shovel. Then he smiled brightly at Sir Ulrich. Aha! So, you will refuse my orders. I'm not saying I reject it. I'm just asking you to respect my honor as a knight. Slap. As soon as Sir Ulrich was about to talk back, the shovel's head, which was wielded by Lloyd, struck Sir Ulrich's face fiercely. Certainly, this territory's constitution needs to be improved at least once. Sir Ulrich's molars were scattered in the air. In the meantime, Lloyd's eyes coldly glistened. Hope you are enjoying The Greatest Estate Designer. To continue listening to rest of the series, visit our website theserialbinger.com for free. Link to the complete series is in the comment box and the description. Like and subscribe for more content ahead.